But yeah, so I think we can get started now. We have a couple of people who've joined in, and then the rest can join in as we go along. So thank you guys. Thank you for joining us on the second episode of Designgoi. So we had some really good reception on the first episode that we did during Ramzan, and we thought to make it a series. Like that was already the idea, but we thought, to do it as like a monthly thing. So every 4 weeks, we'll have three more guests coming in and sharing their stories around design and what that means to them. So I'll give a quick intro of what Ideate is because Ideate is bringing this series to you guys. So we are essentially a design firm that believes in building a more equitable world. And we do this by working in three service areas, one of them in experience and brand design. The second is service and business innovation, and the third is research and strategic insights. That might sound like, just words, but that essentially means everything in the usual design cycle, whether that's design research or experience design or implementation. We are like a full service, full cycle agency for those purposes. And over the course of several years, we have worked with like multiple different sort of organizations. This includes multinational organizations, international design firms, as well as development sector organizations. And as you can see, these names are both local as well as international in other countries. And the sort of industries or thematic areas that we worked on includes financial inclusion, banking and financial ecosystems, startup innovation, agriculture technologies, public health and nutrition, and process of digitalization. These are not like the only areas we're working, but these are where the majorities of our projects have been coming from. But there have been projects in like some other very cool industries also that we've had the chance to work on. So that is about Ideate. And then moving on from that, we are going to start off with the agenda of this episode, which is hearing the stories from our great speakers that we have lined up today. So we have three speakers with us. We have Ms. Zoona Kundi, then we have Marium Naveed and Anusha Khalid. And all three of them have some really cool, interesting stories to share, and they bring very diverse and very interesting perspectives that they've had uh, that we have the chance to, hear from them about what they think and what their work has been like, and sort of zoom in on the little things that they have had the chance to work on. And these stories are around designing playful learning experiences for kindergarten. And then another one is around addressing biases when designing cities. And then the third one is around channeling imposter syndrome to fuel creativity. So a very diverse group of topics that we get to hear from today. And so we're going to start off first by Ms. Zoona Kundi. And she is a multidisciplinary artist and educator specializing in learning and teaching methodologies that require students to not only use their hands or minds, but use their hands, minds, hearts, souls, and everything together. So this is part of the Reggio Emilia approach that she practices, and she has been, practicing this and using this in her career for over a decade now. And before Azuna, I give the floor to you, I have like three rapid fire questions to ask you. The first is, so once you've had like a tiring day or a tiring week, what is your go-to method for unwinding and just relaxing? You're on mute, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
cook.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
nice. Do you have like a favorite dish that you like to cook or like something that you're really proud of making?
No, actually, it depends upon my daughters. So whatever they want to eat, so I have to prepare that. So it's always their choice.
Nice. Sounds
Yeah.
cute and so wholesome. Second question. What is one project or theme that you haven't had the chance to work on yet, but you really want to work on it at some point?
Okay. As the educator for early and primary years or for um, postgraduate classes.
It can be either of them.
Okay, so I think for early and primary years, I really, really want to work on roads and bridges with them
Nice,
because
nice.
it provides a lot of opportunity for interdisciplinary learning and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of STEM as well. STEM and
Yeah,
STEAM. Yeah.
nice. I think that's also like because you don't really hear at that stage these things are sort of being, educated to them and like getting this knowledge. That'll be
Yeah.
really cool to, especially someone like you teaching them would be really interesting and very sort of like a holistic approach to things.
Yeah.
Last question. Are you more of a halwa puri person or a naan chane person?
Halwa puri.
Halwa puri. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Now I will hand over the floor to you, and you can talk through your rituals and tell your story.
Okay, so as I think all of you are aware that I have been teaching all of the age groups, right, for the past many, many years. So this project was actually from 2018. And since I'm Reggio Emilia inspired educator, Reggio Emilia is an educational approach that is coming all the way from Italy, from their town Reggio Emilia, which is in the northern part of Italy. So according to that approach, art is at the heart of learning, right? So whatever the students have to learn, art has to be a central theme or the binding force between the languages, the acquisition of languages or mathematics or sciences or whatsoever. So this project that I did a long time ago was initiated by the call for dams fund by the then Prime Minister Imran Khan. So he wrote a letter for the public, general public, Pakistan ki awam ke liye, to generate funds. So since the school that I was working with at that time was Reggio Emilia inspired and is a project-based IB World School. So all of these approaches blend beautifully together and dovetails into international baccalaureate programs. So the whole system is not only based on hands-on learning, but also revolves around research methodologies. The same research methodology that we do in undergrad or grad level. So that the same thing is taught to kindergarten and nursery level, and it goes up to K through 12. So this project was initiated by that call. And we started we used the letter of the Prime Minister as a provocation to ignite the curiosity about dams and water cycle and precipitation and water bodies and whatnot. So everything that is involved. So it later on became a stream project that also involved a lot of reading and writing and hands-on experimentation. So as part of the Reggio Emilia approach, and art as the center of teaching and learning, it is required that I, as the atelierista, introduce the students to all sorts of techniques and strategies and methodologies of making and creating by introducing them to the various languages of art, including the language of paint, including the language of drawing and clay and everything that you can think of, all of the materials that you can see in an art school at undergrad or grad level, right? So over here, the first picture on the left, the top one, is the final product of what the students created. But I'm going to start with this one where there is a drawing over there. So when I pose the questions to the students, the one of the student came to me and said, well, Auntie Zoona, I can draw it. I said, okay, let's draw it. Let's see what you have in mind. How can we actually work around the topic of generating funds? But first of all, you have to know about the dams and the water cycle and the precipitation and everything. So he made this drawing, and when I asked him, okay, so tell me what is happening in your drawing, and he goes, you know what, there is this ladder, and a man is climbing that ladder, and finally he is going to eventually reach on the top, and there is sun on the top, and he is going to take a hammer and break the sun. And I was like, oh, why do you think that he's going to go and break the sun? And he said, you know what, Auntie Zoona, um, when he is going to break the sun, only then it will be cold, right? And then it will rain. So he had already an idea of the water cycle and how it rains. So my next question was to them, okay, so But if you think that the rain is going to pour down from the sky, do you think that there is a water reservoir up there in the sky somewhere? So from where all of the water is going to fall down on the earth and in the form of rain. So it was a long discussion. I will not be able to cover all of it, but all of the students made their individual drawing, right? But since this education is agentic as well, so all of us got together and we discussed all of the drawings and everything. And then all of us decided to go with this drawing in particular, right? Because it had all of the elements. It had the letter, it had the sun, there was a person, there were clouds, there was rain, and also there were some butterflies and light bugs and water puddles as well. So he had thought it through, right? So he was actually talking about all of those things in that drawing, and the rest of the students were also, but not everybody had actually covered all of these things in their drawings. So we took one or two elements from all of the drawings from the group. There were 25 students in that group at that time, and then we created this installation. So in the next class, when all of them came to me and we were reviewing the drawings again, and some of the students wanted to draw again. So I told them, okay, no, see, we have used the markers and the pencils on paper, right? Today, we are not going to draw on the paper with pens and markers. We are going to use other materials to draw, right? And then they were like, okay, Auntie Zoona, what are the materials? And I had already laid out some materials of my choice, including the wire, which you can see. They had made the cloud out of this wire. So obviously they were just 5 years old with tiny hands and small hand movements and everything. So I asked them to make a small cloud, and each of them created a small cloud, and I designated the space over there on the wall. And I asked them to just, once they are done making the cloud, they can bring it and they can stick it with Scotch tape at the choice, at the place of their choice, right? Wherever they wanted to place it. So that's how they completed the cloud, and later on I joined it, and then I suspended it in the atelier. Then we made the raindrops, and I asked them, okay, how are we going to make it rain? Because you have made the raindrops, and then they said, okay, you know what, Auntie Zoona, we are going to hang them. And I said, okay. So it was not only my decision. Actually, I was working with them. I was asking them. I was actually involving them in the designing process, the whole process of design thinking from the start of the uh, the unit, the project, till the end, where we had to actually curate the exhibition in the atelier. So there was a ladder. So to explore the ladder, we investigated many materials, wooden skewers and clay and husk, and all of the materials that that I could get my hands on. So I provided them with with everything, and they actually explored all of them and made different ladders out of it. But then later on, they told me, Auntie Zuna, we are going to go with this ladder that they made with small wooden skewers and air dry clay. So, and then there was this puddle from the drawing, which I asked them, okay, how are we going to create it? And some of the students said, okay, we can just spill the water. And I said, no, we cannot spill the water because we are exhibiting the work. So then we actually discussed, what do puddles look like? What are the attributes, the traits, and what are the main characteristics of puddles? And then somebody said, okay, we can see ourselves, because water always reflect, right? So when we talked about reflection, so somebody said, because I had some big mirrors also in the atelier, so one of the students just ran towards it and said, "Oh, Anusha, you know what? We can use this. Can you please bring it over here?" And then we placed it. So that's how the story goes. And for the sun, we use the overhead projector, and we actually explored paper mache, and everything to make the sun, but they couldn't just get a goal form for the sun. So and then we realized, oh, we have the overhead projector in the room, and we can actually use it to create the sun. So it was kind of a very wholesome experience. And the students, when they walked into the atelier at the exhibition day, they were like, well, they were so proud of their work. They really were. Yeah. So
That
yeah,
that
that's
sounds
the story.
lovely. It
Yeah.
sounds like so wholesome, especially, the little things that, like the ladder that you can go up and you break the sun and that's how, it's going to rain. So these
Yeah.
perspectives, like just like working with kids, I'm sure it's like they give you like lots to just learn from them about how they approach the world and like, the sort of curiosity that they bring in and sort of questions that they ask. That is just like so wholesome to
Absolutely,
hear.
absolutely. Because we believe that the students, although they, I mean, they're just 5 years old, 6 years old, but they have their own experiences, right?
Mhm.
Not the kind of experiences that we have, right? But they have their extensions in the world, and they know the world uh, from whatever little they know, right?
Yeah,
So, but their experiences are authentic. Whatever
definitely.
the theories they have, they are authentic theories. So we have to actually listen to them. Yeah.
Certainly, certainly. I have two questions, and like if anyone in the audience has questions, please feel free to drop in the chat. So one is like in this whole project, what was it that the children were like most excited about doing, or like was it a particular moment or particular part of this that they were like really into?
Okay, so this project was actually, I think, 6 to 7 weeks long, and they used to come to me in the atelier twice a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time they were there, the smaller lesson we used to complete the leftover work from the last class, and the bigger chunk, the lesson that was around 1 hour and 20 minutes long. So in that lesson, we always used to do new things, new material exploration and everything. So they were excited about everything, because we not only just did material exploration, we drew from with the wires and the other materials, but we did collage, and we painted as well. And I remember when we were making the ladders, so when I gave them khas, right? You know what khas is, right? कूल जो हमारे कूलर्स होते हैं उनमें लगती है खस.
Okay, ha. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very long, right? Meters long. So although the atelier was a very big room, but even then they were unable to actually just put it straight on the floor. So they took it outside in the piazza. Piazza was the courtyard right outside the atelier, and it is kind of an extension of the atelier. We used to work over there as well. So they took it outside, and then without me telling them to work in groups or to be mindful of and be empathetic and everything. So they were so into it. I actually enjoyed that one particular lesson with them the most, and I think they were the most engaged in that one. So yeah, all of the sessions were like this mostly. I cannot hear you. You're
Sorry, yeah.
yeah.
We have a question from the audience. So Arisha is asking, what has been your inspiration to target young participants for in your work, especially in this project? Like what
Okay.
drives you to work towards
Okay,
children?
okay. So because I was working at a school at that time, and I was working particularly with these younger children. So, but my approach to teaching and learning was like that. I always used to initiate something came up with a project idea with the other teachers, the other staff, because collaboration was a big part and is still a big part of the design process, according to Reggio Emilia approach and project-based learning. So all of the teachers have to sit together and plan the learning experiences together. So yeah, so I used to take the idea to the students as my own idea, right? So as if I am working in my studio, right? And I am inviting somebody to work with me as a participant, right? So we used to work together and I used to play naive. बच्चों को बताती थी कि okay, no, I don't know how it works, so you have to tell me, giving them the autonomy, the authority to lead the way. And I used to follow whatever they said, whatever they wanted to do.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Another question, and then we'll move on. So Asad is asking, was there something that really surprised you during this project?
Okay, so it was a very, very long time ago,
Okay.
but I think the student engagement, because they used to wait for our sessions. All of the students wait for our sessions. So that was really heartwarming.
Okay. Good. And how long was this project, like from start to till when the everything was
Uh,
ready?
Almost 7 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Thank you so much, Zoona, for this. It was super wholesome and really interesting to just learn about how what it's like to work with children from a and like using this Radio Emilia approach and like what are the outcomes of such an approach.
Yeah.
Think next up we have Mariam. So Mariam is an urban planner who works in the realm of public transport, public spaces, and community building in cities. She's currently working on urban development projects with local governments, including a bicycle lane project in Islamabad. And she's also really, her favorite project currently is working on bus stops and road intersection and thinking about those things. So Mariam, before we move on to your story, again, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, what's your favorite spot in the city for whatever reason or purpose?
My favorite spot in the city is this park that I forget the name of, but it's right in front of the Faisal Masjid. It's something Park Steel Mill sort of a park. It's a linear park.
Oh, is
Uh,
it in the green belt wali
it
cheese?
is, yeah, it's
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
belt.
yeah.
It's not really a park, it's more of a
Mm,
track. पर
yeah,
उसके साथ ही बिल्कुल there's a heavy highway running, and like I like to experience के how even close to a very heavy traffic highway, the park provides this sense of calm and serenity in that space.
yeah, yeah. And I think like on one side there's the highway and the other side is the street of E7. It's like you get the best of both worlds and you're right in the middle. This
Yeah.
kind of thing. Okay. Second question. If you had to change just one thing about the city to make it a little more livable, what would it be?
I would say add more traffic signals, add more speed bumps, make it difficult for cars to take very fast turns, and add a lot of crosswalks. I think that wasn't one thing; these were a lot of things, but they all come under make
Yeah.
intersections safer.
Yeah, and just like make it more pedestrian friendly. Yeah. Last question. What song have you been listening to on repeat these days?
Ooh, there's this song. So yeah, it's still new and I don't remember the name, but
Okay.
it's a song by Berlioz. It's a jazz song. It's called, oh yeah, actually it's called NYC in 1940. So yeah,
Ooh, nice name.
give it a listen.
Okay. I will. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to your story.
All right. Hi, I am Marium Naveed. I am an urban planner based in Islamabad. I'm currently working with Atom Camp on on a couple of urban development projects, including the bicycling lane project for Islamabad. We're working on that with the CDA. We basically help develop the initial vision plan for the cycling infrastructure for the city and also help develop the PC1 document for it. Um, when I started working on the project, I think I came in with the assumption and expecting fully to do a lot of convincing work, that I'll have to convince a lot of people within the city administration, within CDA, within other organizations, and also with the general public. But surprisingly, that was not the case. I found out that like a lot of people were very, like the project was very well received. People showed a lot of interest in it. People were excited about it. And if you think about it, it is generally a trending thing to introduce cycling infrastructure in cities. It's happening west mein to ho hi raha hai. It's also happening. Our South Asian cities are taking it up. It's happening in Malaysia, Iran, India, Bangladesh. So I think there is a general momentum for cycling and micromobility, jiski wajah se like we didn't have to face a lot of backlash, or we didn't have to do a lot of convincing on the project. पर जब भी हम ये project introduce कराते थे, तो there used to be like cycling के लिए enthusiasm was always followed by this one concern or one sort of contention कि आप मोटरसाइकिलिस्ट का क्या करेंगे, मोटरसाइकिलिस्ट को आप कैसे रोकेंगे, उनको आप कैसे कंट्रोल करेंगे, उनको तो आपको बहुत यू विल हैव टू इंश्योर हैवी रेगुलेशन फॉर मोटरसाइकिलिस्ट के वो आपकी बाइक लेन्स खराब ना करें. तो आई फील लाइक दिस जनरली an assumption about motorcyclists कि they're wayward, they don't follow the rules, they're overspeeding, they make their own path on the road, और कोई उनको रेगुलेट नहीं कर सकता, कोई उन्हें कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकता. बचाना पड़ता है, आपको भी अपने आप को मोटरसाइकिल से बचाना पड़ता है और उनको भी बचाना पड़ता है on the road. And they're generally considered a nuisance for everyone on the road. And this is why this photo is so moving for me and it's so telling for me. Why I love this photo is because it tells the other side of the story. So if you look at this photo, let's dig in case mein ho kya raha hai. Basically, I took this photo from the comfort of my car. I was in a comfortable space, AC chal raha tha, gaane lage hue the, aur I was just trying to capture a nice spring day. With no particular intention. I captured this photo on the Islamabad Expressway. और expressway पे अगर आपने travel किया हुआ है तो you would know that it's one of the most frustrating, one of the most dangerous highways in running right through the middle of the city. और इस पे बहुत सारे लोगों को आना पड़ता है for their everyday commute. तो इस फोटो में अगर आप देखें, there's a couple of motorbikes. लोग काम पे जा रहे हैं, किसी की मोटर बाइक खराब हो गई है और दे हैव टू मैनेज फिक्सिंग इट इन द मिडल ऑफ द हाईवे. कोई शेड नहीं है, कोई शेल्टर नहीं है, कोई सिक्योरिटी नहीं है. There's families on the motorbikes, there's people going to work, there's oftentimes older people on motorbikes we see. और किस तरह की कंडीशंस में मोटरबाइक्स चल रही होती हैं हमारे शहरों में. Our cities are designed wide lanes, बड़ी roads, बड़े flyovers, बड़े like open intersections, and these are the kind of spaces that motorcyclists have to navigate on an everyday basis. They are not like you as a motorcyclist, you don't have the protection of a car, you don't have any sort of shade or any sort of shelter during your commute, and it's definitely like a choice that you have to make, a safety choice, as well as like it's not as comfortable as a car, as a ride in a car would be. But you don't really like, even with all the discomforts and the things that come with driving a motorbike on these roads, there is a huge population in our cities that are driving motorbikes. So if you consider if they choose to behave in a certain way, is it really a motorcyclist behavior, or is it a design problem of our cities? There's this concept of shortest distance. Yeah, there's this concept of desired path, yeah, desired lines in urban design. And motorbikes, like bikes, like scooters, like any sort of micromobility vehicle, would choose to take the desired path or the shortest distance between point A to point B. So this makes you understand कि एक motorcyclist के behavior के पीछे क्या reasons होते हैं या क्या choices होती हैं. But we, like in our cars, we try to think of it as a certain, like we think of it as wayward behavior on the road, as a nuisance on the road. So this perception of motorcyclists, I guess I was listening to all of these things a lot in my work. And when I took this photo, I wasn't really intending to capture anything. It was just a nice photograph that I took. But when I went back to it, there's something that clicked for me in this photo, that clicked for me and that made me think as an urban planner, as a person who is making these decisions. Okay, what is this bias that we have against motorbikes? And I think this bias is coming directly from our preference over car-centric infrastructure for our cities. So whether motorcyclists would like to prefer to be in a car, most probably. Whether do we think that they would be better served अगर हमारे शहरों में public transport infrastructure होता और public transport infrastructure के साथ safety आती है, convenience आता है, consistency आती है. Whether they would choose to switch to public transport, probably. But as it happens, there is a huge population of motorcyclists on our roads right now. And if you think about it, imagine all of these motorcyclists switch to cars overnight. Where would that leave our cities? हमारी शहरों में कितनी चोकिंग हो जाएगी, हमारे शहरों में कितनी कंजेशन बढ़ जाएगी अगर ये सारे मोटरसाइकिलिस्ट गाड़ियों पे आ जाएं. So these are some things that I was thinking about when I looked at this photo, but also during my work when I think about motorcyclists or unka role in our or unka position on our roads. So this brings me to my perspective on motorcyclists and to my understanding. And the thing that really sparked for me in this photograph is that motorbikes are a form of micromobility. They may not be the textbook definition of micromobility. They are probably a tad faster than most micromobility vehicles. They are motorized vehicles, but they're our form of micromobility. They are our South Asian form of micromobility. और हमारे शहरों में ये persistently और एक prevalent reality है. So rather than shunning them, rather than being constantly annoyed by them, and rather than excluding them from our design processes and from the design of our streets and cities, why don't we accept them and why don't we try to include them as legitimate users of the road, of the street? There's also, talking about micromobility and the little bit that I do know about micromobility, there are also a lot of pros to motorbikes. If you think about it, they take up a lot less space than cars, or they're a lot easier to store and a lot easier to transport on our city streets. They definitely have a smaller footprint than cars, and considering कि अक्सर motorbikes पे एक बंदा नहीं होता, अक्सर मोटरबाइक्स पे 2 या 3 बंदे होते हैं, which is probably more than जितनी हमारी गाड़ियों में लोग होते हैं single driven automobiles से. So they definitely have a smaller footprint, and there is a possibility with better battery technology in the future. There is the possibility that these motorbikes turn into electric vehicles or e-bikes. And that opens up a whole new other possibility of options. E-scooters ke saath ya e-bikes ke saath, they're definitely safer, more convenient, and there's a possibility that there's a higher uptake or adoption by women of these electric vehicles. So I guess what I take from this photograph and from the connection that it sparked in my mind as a person who is working in planning and designing cities is that there is a need to understand that whatever is happening on the street, there are multiple users of the street, and there's no illegitimate use of the street. There's no bad decisions or good decisions. They're all decisions, and they're often made by, like, the commuter decisions made on the street are a consequence of the design of our streets. So it's great that we're building on bike lanes, and like we've made the like we have an emphasis on micromobility, but it's important to understand that micromobility हमारे शहरों में it's not going to be the same way जिस तरह western cities में हो रही है. हमारे शहरों में micromobility can mean multiple things. It can mean bikes and it can mean motorbikes. And the whole bike lane project, I feel it has to serve a wider purpose of making the general road safe for everyone, safe for motorbikes, safe for pedestrians, safe for cyclists. It cannot prioritize one form of mobility over another, which basically it currently is doing. So I think this is one of my takeaways, and one of the things that I'm trying to push for. The street generally becomes safer um, for all users, especially for the users जिनके लिए हम generally design नहीं करते. And motorcyclists are a big proportion of those users. जिनको बहुत, it's easy to shun on them, it's easy to neglect them, and it's easy to not include them when we're thinking of designing our streets. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just really good to hear that, that at least we have some people who are at least in some form involved in the design of the cities, even though it might not be, as on a scale that you would like to. But like there are these conversations happening, and someone who's like, rooting for how to design better streets. And I think one thing I'd like to highlight, I loved your term that you used, illegitimate users of the street, or like any design product or service. I think that's such an interesting way to look at it, because there are always these extremes, this is too extreme, and these users are not users, even though those users are still users, because you cannot stop them from using the thing that you're creating. So that was super interesting. Um, One thing, and then also, how we in general, like design, we would like, if something is not working, don't blame the user. Like look at your journeys and look at your design work that you've done. I think when it comes to like people that we have a bias against, or like motorcyclists हो गए, or like even in other, fields or things, उसमें बस ये होता है कि, you just blame them and then not look at what's driving that behavior, and why are things happening a certain way. So this was super insightful to look at. Um, One question that I have is, um, so I don't know how fairly recent was this photo or whatever, but like, did you have any chance to, talk to someone about these biases, or like how successful has those discussions been, or like, was there any inclination to accept your point of view on things?
I think I haven't really had a a conversation or a detailed talk. And even though I'm trying to push for this, I think it has to be gradual, because there's this whole thing you can't just, like, even if I say all these things, yeah, it will come as a thing that I'm trying to advocate for, or a thing that I'm trying to favor. So it has to be gradual. But I think one conversation that I had with a former friend on this was, and he was Dutch, and like I was just trying to communicate this exact idea that motorcyclists are sort of the neglected, and the, like, cyclists पे भी अब काफी emphasis है और focus है throughout the world, even in the West, पर motorcyclists को, और अक्सर motorcyclists in the West um, are delivery workers, if you think about it. So they are neglected users on the street now, अब क्योंकि cycling पे focus है. So I was surprised to see that, like, it's not specific to Pakistan. It is even in other parts of the world. Motorized vehicle पे जो है वो like there's just a general discontent around it, which I understand that if you're an active cyclist, I guess आपको उसका आपको नुकसान पता चलता है. But I think कि my understanding of this whole situation has basically been what you sort of summarized as well, that there's no good or bad choices that people make on the road. They're just choices, and you have to understand why they're making those choices. And you have to understand why people still prefer motorized vehicles or motorcycles. साइकिल्स आ भी जाएंगी, पाकिस्तान में adoption शुरू भी हो जाएगी, तो I don't think motorcycles are going anywhere. So you have to still take them in the loop of your designing and your research processes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Mariam. So do we have any questions? Let me just check. Okay, so Arisha has a question in the Q&A section. It says public transport infrastructure and its convenience in Pakistan seems like an unsustainable approach, which take the example of red buses that are operating in Karachi. The interior of the bus is a replica of a foreign public transport and doesn't even bring any sort of comfort to the public who rely on it. Do you think this sort of design needs a makeover?
So for some reason, I've been to Karachi, but I haven't traveled. I haven't used the red bus, so I can't speak to it very specifically. But I think जो metro services run हो रही हैं शहरों में, or like Islamabad में at least, the buses are comfortable as long as they're BRTs. So they're pretty comfortable, or they're serving the population, like they're serving the purpose well. I feel like the one thing जो कि अभी मसला create करती है, that is कि उनकी usage बहुत है. There's a lot of people that want to get on it and there's not enough buses. तो उसकी वजह से maybe there's crowdy, मतलब overcrowding हो जाती है, congestion हो जाती है, और वो एक uncomfortable experience होता है. पर generally my personal experience with buses has been good. In like this whole metro services का जो metro system की जो services हैं, I feel like they're doing pretty well. They just need more of it, a lot more of it, and to expand the network a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. I think it has to do again, just more public transport. Like there's just not enough supply as much as there is demand. And even if you look at like India, may like the public transport network has been expanding exponentially, but even still, वहाँ पे भी like if you look at images or visuals जो कभी आते हैं, like the trains are full, the buses are full, and people are just like still cramming to get on them. I think public transport in general is like we need to just scale up quite rapidly in that sense.
Yeah. And another thing that maybe needs to happen with public transport is that it needs to be thought of as a whole journey. Right now, it's just जो कि buses से connect कर रहा है या stops हैं. There is no first last mile consideration made in the planning of these. Or I think that is also a major reason for discomfort, या जो लोग अभी गाड़ियों से switch नहीं कर रहे public transport पे, it's because they don't have that first and last mile commute, like
Yeah.
good options for that.
Yeah.
Motorbikes,
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot for that. So we are going to, just because we're sort of running short on time, to the next speaker. So we have Anusha Khalid. So Anusha and I have also worked together, and interestingly, we recently worked on a mobility project last summer. So this was all very relevant to us also. But Anusha is a graphic designer and illustrator based in Lahore. She's currently working as a senior graphic designer at Train. She used her practice as a means to solve everyday problems and raise awareness about social issues that require our attention. She's a lifelong learner and a storyteller and loves to experiment and explore. So Anusha, the three questions that I have for you, where did it go? Wait. Um, okay, yeah. So these days when you're designing stuff, is there a particular color that you find yourself navigating more towards and trying to use it more in your designs?
Yes, black.
Black.
Simple.
Okay. Is there a particular reason for that, or do you just like love black?
I don't know. I just feel like, since childhood, black was something that I always loved to use in background, because, black just gives so much space to other colors to sort of like shine. And I always use like bold colors and, sort of vibrant vibe in my illustrations and like drawing work. So I always used to love black as like background. So black is like my go-to color.
Okay. Cool. Second question, if you could visit any fictional world, which one would it be? And it doesn't have to be fantasy, it just needs to be fiction, could be a movie or a show or anything.
I think I'd love to be in the movie Space Between Us. उसमें जो
Okay.
space scene होता
हाँ.
है, I just find that whole scene very fascinating, and I feel like I'd love to go on like Mars someday.
I haven't seen the movie, but मुझे कुछ याद आ रहा है कुछ उसमें है, so I will watch it this weekend and then get back to you on that.
Okay.
Last question. If you weren't a visual designer, what would you be?
Ooh. So interestingly, I was actually studying computer science, and I also applied in like different universities for computer science degree. So I would probably be a really bad software engineer if I was not a visual designer.
Okay. How did that shift happen from CS to design?
It was actually a discussion with my brother where he just sat me down and he was like, okay, you're going to this university for engineering, but I've always found you like interested in arts, and that's something that you really enjoy doing. Why aren't you doing it? And I was like, our design degrees are like शौक में तो ठीक है, but when it comes to like money and like I always wanted to be like financially independent, so like when it comes to money I feel like it's not very a viable option. And he was like, who told you that? And like the world is changing and there are so many disciplines. So I always wanted to be like a fashion designer. I didn't know that graphic design existed. So he was like, hey, my friend is doing this course called graphic design, और उसका कोर्स वर्क वगैरह देखो, see if this is something that um, uh, you're interested in. And when I looked at the courses, it had like illustration, photography. I was like, what world is this? Why didn't I know? So I was like, this is what I want to do. So that's how I got into graphic design.
Nice. Okay. So moving on to your story.
Yeah. So I will be sharing a personal story. So 2 years back, I was scrolling through my phone, probably watching memes on Instagram. I got this notification, and someone had mentioned me, and it said Adobe somewhere. And I was like, I don't even use LinkedIn. What is happening? And I got curious, and I clicked on the notification. And when I opened it, I saw this image on the left. So one of my design projects was featured by Adobe. So this was something that I had done in like my spare time. It was like a personal project. और मैंने बस वो design करके ना I just put it on my portfolio on Behance, and I didn't like send it anywhere to be like showcased or like considered for like a feature. But this was something that happened out of nowhere, and my instant reaction was like, I was over the moon. I was like, what is happening? I was a third year design student at that time, so this sort of validation while you're a student means a lot to you. So I got really excited, and I was sending it everywhere. Abba ko, my peers, I was like, look at this, this happened. Adobe is this platform, and this is something um, huge for me at that time. So fast forward to a few days later, shuru mein to people were just congratulating and saying, okay, this is so cool. We're so proud of you. Pakistani artists getting featured and all. Uske baad, a few weeks later, when the post got reached and people from Pakistan, in the industry saw the post, they reached out to me. And they were like, we saw this and we want to work with you. There were job offers, and there were potential collaboration interests. So usually what a person would do is that they'll get excited, and they'll be like, that's such a good opportunity, and I'll take it, and they'll be excited about it. I was terrified. I was like, what is happening? Congratulations, tak to theek tha. Why are people, do they not know that I'm just a student right now? And, even if I say yes to all these offers, they're probably going to be a day when they find out that, this is just a student. She's still learning, and she's probably not the right person for the job. So I did the worst thing that one can do. Some of these offers, I wouldn't even listen to what they want me to do, and I would just say, no, I'm busy, I cannot take this on, just because I was thinking that, they're gonna know that, I'm just a student and I still have a lot to learn. Or there was this feeling that, they're gonna find out wali. So this was happening on LinkedIn. So it was not just my professional thingy that I was struggling in by saying no to all these opportunities. I actually struggled academically too. I used to enjoy, working on my projects, university ke, but after this happened, for some reason I just got so fixated on the results of, my assignments and all the design work that I was doing, that I couldn't enjoy the process. I used to I started procrastinating a lot. I just couldn't initiate these projects ke, it has to be perfect or nothing. So I had this black and white thinking कि जी अब now that people expect a certain form of quality from me, I need to put out the best work. So while this was happening, it just got it got to my, like, say, head. I was very depressed at that time. I was like, why is this happening to me? This was supposed to be a good thing, but for some reason I'm just feeling very hollow, and this, self doubt. This was something that I never felt before, or ekdam say this something that happened, I should be happy about it, but mera to ulta hi is ho raha hai. So I was having this discussion with a friend one day, and I was like, this is how I'm feeling, and I cannot really put a finger on what exactly it is, and it's just so annoying. So she told me, okay, the feeling that you're describing is actually called imposter syndrome. So this was some first time I was hearing the word imposter syndrome, and being the Gen Z person that I am, the first thing that I did was Google it, and I was like, and there it was. Exactly जो मेरी सारी फीलिंग थी वो एक दो लाइन में डिफाइन हुई थी, and it was called imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome, for those of you who don't know, is that feeling of inadequacy and feeling like a fraud despite the evidence of your achievement. And you feel like you don't belong in a room with all these people who have achieved so much, and you got there by luck somehow, and it was not your hard work and your effort. It was just an accident, or like just a moment of luck. So I was like, okay, so that was a moment that changed, saved my life at that point. I was like, okay, now I feel a lot better now that I know that this is what I'm feeling. I'll be able to cope with it. So वही बात जो हम जैसे डिजाइन में भी कहते हैं कि the solution to any problem starts with like identification of the problem. अगर आपने एक problem को identify कर लिया तो आपका आधा solution वहीं पे आ गया आपके पास. So that was like the moment for me. मुझे पता चला what imposter syndrome was. I started researching on it. Fast forward to a few months later, we were told KG, think about thesis project, and this was something that I had already been researching on. I was like, I had these really hard months पिछले दिनों, and I need to do something about it. And luckily I am a visual designer, so I need to channel those feelings somehow in this thesis project, because thesis project is this one project that you need to put so much work into researching, designing, executing it. You need to be fully committed to something, and since imposter syndrome and those feelings was something that I was really like invested in, I was like, this is a good thing to choose for like thesis project. So I started my research or imposter syndrome से I researched more उस पे फिर I got to know the types of imposter syndrome, and the one that I could relate to the most was the perfectionist type, because my whole imposter syndrome manifested into this feeling of you need to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. Either you do everything perfectly or just don't do it at all, because there's this certain form of fear of judgment involved कि अच्छा लोग क्या कहेंगे, and what if they find out that you know all this is just a hoax or kuch it's just you trying to pretend something that you're not. और फिर through research मुझे ये भी पता चला कि it's not just because पहले मुझे लगा था कि women में it's a lot more than men, and then I was like maybe it's like a subcontinent thing because of all the notions जो हम बचपन से हमें सिखाया जाता है कि आपको एक certain way में behave करना है, especially when you're out there studying and all. So you need to get a lot of you need to get good grades, you need to perform good, नहीं तो शादी कर देंगे तुम्हारी, or all these feelings. But this is like a global thing. Even the most prominent actresses and all these business women go through it at some point in their life. So I was like this is a good topic to work on. So उस पे मैंने उसको narrow down किया था perfectionism में, कि किस तरह imposter syndrome is linked to perfectionism. And then I made these whole illustration series of a girl's journey from perfectionism to mindfulness, and it included topics like this inner turmoil, this imposter telling you how you need to do everything perfectly or else you won't make it out in the world, and then social media facade and the self-image that girls go through. Then there was procrastination and its linked with perfectionism. And then I hinted towards like a solution, which was mindfulness. Uske liye I made this whole kit called Mindfully, जिसमें people could over a span of 4 weeks people could use these one card daily, and they were positive affirmations and some journaling stuff ke kis tarah you can be more mindful in a day, and instead of thinking about what could go wrong, what is it that can go right. And instead of searching for external um, external factors के अच्छा इस वजह से ये अच्छी चीज़ मेरे साथ हुई है, learn to kind of know के all the stuff that you're achieving in your life is actually your hard work and effort, and just a bit of self love actually. So it was like a very extensive project. So the image that you're seeing on the right is actually from the exhibition Lahore, at the Lahore Digital Festival, where I displayed this work. And for me, all of this work was just became worth it when all these people were coming to me and they were saying we can feel seen, this is something that is happening to us in our daily life. And since I feel like imposter syndrome, especially among designer and creative people, is such a common thing, but because it's such a vulnerable thing to discuss, we're not openly discussing it. Everyone is just individually suffering alone because क्या सोचेंगे लोग. So I just feel like in Designgoi, yes, in spaces like these we need to discuss these topics so that एक दूसरे से ही सीख के वो जिस तरह मुझे नहीं पता था, if I was a part of a talk like this, or I saw a work जो imposter syndrome को discuss कर रहा था, I would have been better prepared because I would have known कि अच्छा this is what it's about. So for me, my project was like a therapy, like transforming your fear into this visual dialogue and then turning your vulnerability into a strength through the power of design was something that I learned. And yeah, that was just the story.
Thank you so much for that. I think a lot of this must be really very relatable to the other guests and also just the audience in general. Because again, like you said, imposter syndrome is something that a lot of us feel, but like हम openly discuss नहीं करते because then we're like उनको पता चल जाएगा कि I'm not as good as I want. And the thing that you also said about, spaces like Designgoi. So like, even if you just like if I consider myself right now hosting this thing, if you had asked me, okay, would like 2, 3 years ago, I would be like, I cannot host this thing. Like, I'm not a host. I can't do any of this thing. Like, abhi bhi, I can see like something is wrong with my camera. So मेरी picture बहुत dull आ रही है. So I would be like, I need everything to be perfect. But now I'm just like, just like whatever you're putting out, there are people who want to see and hear these stories and want to, be a part of it. So it's fine. Like you learn with time. And like just people are here for, like they know what they're here for. So you don't need to give them or try to give them a lot more than what they already know.
Yeah.
और ये opportunities में काफी दफा होता है कि if someone is reaching out to you about something and you feel like you're not qualified, just don't think that because they know your qualification. वो आपको पास किसी वजह से आ रहे हैं. So like, always be accepting of that.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
we go
yeah,
through it, like especially in early in your career, or everybody goes through it. They're like, अच्छा नहीं अभी मैं स्टूडेंट हूँ, तो मैं डिज़ाइनर जब प्रॉपर बन जाऊंगी ग्रेजुएट होके तब मैं ये प्रोजेक्ट करूंगी. अब डिज़ाइनर
yeah,
बन जाते हैं, अभी तो मैं फ्रेश ग्रेड हूँ, प्रॉब्ली मुझे 1-2 साल काम कर लेना चाहिए, फिर आई शुड वर्क ऑन अ प्रोजेक्ट लाइक दिस. फिर 2 साल बाद you're like, this is like something that a creative director should be doing. I'm not qualified enough. So there's never going to be that perfect time. Just take that initiative and say yes, and just get out of your comfort zone, and just
mm,
tell that imposter in your head to back off and live
yeah,
your life and just enjoy the process.
definitely. So from this time to where you are right now, mashallah, say, how has that changed for you? Like, you still feel, कभी-कभी phases आते हैं, like you're not good enough or like imposter syndrome होता है, yeah, or have you learned to deal with it much better now?
So nahi, actually, so मेरा जो thesis वाला project था ना, I feel like that was the therapy for imposter syndrome. So now ऐसा नहीं thoughts नहीं आते. Obviously there are moments when you're like in self doubt, but then since you know about it, you have this alter ego कि जब वो एक thought आ रहा है ना कि you're not good enough, then there's another thought that I know who you are, you need to go and know I'm good enough and I'm going to be doing this and I am more than qualified enough, and if someone is reaching out, I would at least respond. So yeah, I feel like I've grown as a person, and I feel like this sort of story and all these stories where we share our vulnerabilities are very important, because आप ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप खुद से किसी चीज़ को से गुजर के उसको सीखो, आप दूसरों की स्टोरी से भी सीख सकते हो, and then you don't really need to go through it yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for that. If there are any questions or comments from the audience, please do share. I know we're already over time, but like, thank you so much, Anusha, Zoona, Mariam, for joining us. These were really interesting, really inspiring stories, and it was just great to hear from people working in the industry in like different aspects, different cities, and bringing their perspectives together. Um, so yeah, if you have like any question for each other or any comments, please feel free, and then we can wrap up.
No.
Thank you, Ideate and Faizan, for creating this space. I think it's also like we share like, behind the scenes stories, or sometimes it's for me. I thought of it as a way to think through a thing that wasn't fully formulated in the project that I'm working on. It hasn't really manifested in the work that I'm doing yet, but I guess like just putting it out there, just formulating it as a story and sharing it as a story with you all, is that is the just the kick
Yeah,
I need to actually work on. So
it's good to hear. Um, okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you in the third episode soon. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Love this.
Bye.
Love
Cheers.
it.